They say nothing prepares you for the moment your world cracks open. Not heartbreak, not fear, not even guilt. But I swear to you, nothing could have prepared me for that morning. The sunlight slipped through the blinds like it always did, soft, filtered, familiar. I turned over, still caught in that blurry space between dreaming and waking. Sheets twisted at my legs, the smell of laundry detergent and skin still clinging to the pillow beside me. And in that first second, I smiled, because I thought it was her. Samantha, my wife, the woman I'd been married to for 7 years. The woman who knew how I took my coffee, how I hated the sound of ticking clocks, how I never slept without one foot outside the blanket. I reached out under the covers, my fingers brushing warm skin, a shoulder, a back, hair that was shorter than hers. My hand paused, my breath stalled, and I opened my eyes. It wasn't Samantha. It was him. And I froze. Every nerve in my body locked up like I'd just been struck by lightning. He was facing away, sheets pulled low on his hips, one hand tucked under his head. His bare back rose and fell with the slow rhythm of sleep, and just below his shoulder blade, a tattoo I recognized, because I'd seen it up close before. Too close. I sat up fast, heartbeat crashing in my ears. What the hell happened? The room looked like ours, but something fell off. The framed wedding photo was still on the nightstand. The scent of lavender candles clung to the air, but nothing about this moment felt real. I couldn't even remember how we got here. The night before was a blur of red wine, arguments, long silences. And him. Of course it was him. His name is Jamie, and he's my wife's brother. Yeah, let that sink in. My brother-in-law. The man I was never supposed to think about, never supposed to notice. But somehow, I did. From the beginning. The first time I met him, I was 25, freshly engaged to Samantha. She took me to a beach house for a family weekend. Jamie had just turned 22. He was studying abroad back then. Tan, carefree, always barefoot. He had that recklessness in his smile, the kind that makes you feel like you're missing something, even if you don't know what. And me, I was a good man back then. Or at least I pretended to be. I kept my eyes where they were supposed to be. Mostly, I married Samantha that fall. But Jamie stayed in the background of my mind like a flickering light I couldn't switch off. Years passed. Family dinners, birthdays, holidays. He'd show up and I'd feel it again. That low hum under my skin. I buried it, swallowed it, ignored the way my chest tightened when he laughed too loudly or hugged me too long. Because I had a wife. Because I made vows. Because I didn't want to be that guy. Until last night. And now I was sitting in bed, next to a half-naked man I was never supposed to want. Try to remember how everything had fallen apart. I got out of bed like I was walking through fire. Every step felt like guilt and adrenaline and disbelief tangled in my chest. I grabbed my shirt off the floor, yanked it over my head, and went straight to the bathroom, closed the door, stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked pale, exhausted, haunted. What had I done? What did this mean? Behind me, I heard the bed shift, then footsteps, then a knock, soft, almost hesitant. "Ryan," he said. Even his voice made me ache. I didn't answer. "Can we talk?" I turned the faucet on instead. "Ryan, please." And then I opened the door. He was standing there in nothing but boxers, looking like he hadn't slept either. I could barely look him in the eye. "Did we?" I asked. He didn't speak right away. Then, "Yeah." I closed my eyes. Jesus Christ. He stepped back, giving me space. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said quietly. "Then why did it?" I snapped, voice sharper than I expected. "Because you kissed me." My stomach dropped. "No, I didn't." "You did," he said again. "We both did." I couldn't breathe, because now it was real. Not a dream, not a mistake, not something I could chalk up to alcohol or emotion. I kissed him. And now everything I knew about myself, my marriage, my identity, my morality, was unraveling like thread between my fingers. "I have to go," I said. "Where?" I don't know. Anywhere. I started toward the door, but he moved in front of it. Don't just leave. I have a wife, Jamie. I know. His voice cracked. I didn't plan this either, Ryan. I've spent years trying not to want you. I froze again. His eyes were wide open now. No sarcasm, no smirk, no playful edge. Just truth. Naked, terrifying truth. You think you're the only one who's been haunted by this? He asked. You think I haven't hated myself for every look I stole, every second I held on too long? My throat was dry. I never thought you. I did. He took a step closer. I still do. Silence. That thick, choking kind. The one that drowns you. I turned away, because if I looked at him any longer, I'd forget how to leave. I picked up my keys and walked out the door, down the stairs, into the cold morning air, and drove. No destination, no direction, just me, the road, and a heart that wouldn't stop screaming. What the hell have you done? That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town. No one knew me there. The receptionist didn't ask questions. And when I fell into bed, the silence was louder than anything I'd ever heard. I stared at the ceiling for hours. Replay after replay. Every word, every breath, every touch. And the worst part? I didn't just regret it. I missed it. If you woke up next to someone you were never supposed to love, would you run or stay? Tell me in the comments, what would you do? Drop your thoughts below. Like if you've ever faced a moment you couldn't explain. Subscribe for next, because this story is about to go even deeper. I stayed in that motel for 3 days. No calls, no texts, just silence and the constant static of my own thoughts. I didn't go into work. I didn't go home. I didn't even check on Samantha. Every time I picked up my phone, my hand shook. What was I going to say? Hey, babe, sorry I disappeared. I just cheated on you with your brother. No, there weren't words for something like this. And yet, my mind wouldn't stop going back to that moment. That kiss, that touch, the way Jamie had looked at me, not just with desire, but with something else, something closer to recognition, like he'd known before I did. On the 4th morning, I woke up to a pounding headache and sunlight bleeding through the dusty curtains. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and realized something strange. I missed him. Not Samantha. Not my house. Not the comfort of routine. Him. His voice. His smell. The way his hands shook slightly when he was nervous, or how he laughed too hard at his own jokes. And that scared the hell out of me. Because maybe this wasn't just a mistake. Maybe it meant something. Maybe I didn't know myself as well as I thought I did. By noon, I knew I couldn't hide forever. I checked out of the motel and drove straight to the office. My assistant gave me a polite smile when I walked in, but her eyes darted up, curious. Everything okay, Mr. Hale? I nodded. Yeah, just needed a few days. She didn't press. Smart girl. I walked into my office, locked the door behind me, and sat down at my desk like nothing had happened. Emails, contracts, memos, but none of it stuck. I couldn't focus. I couldn't breathe right. Because everything I'd built, my marriage, my career, my identity, suddenly felt paper thin. And worse, fragile. That night, I didn't go home. I drove to a bar instead. Not one of those sleek upscale places my colleagues went to. Somewhere quiet. Dim, almost forgotten. I sat at the far end, ordered whiskey neat, and stared at the wood grain in the counter like it could give me answers. The bartender didn't talk. Bless him. But after my second glass, someone slid onto the stool beside me. I didn't have to look to know who it was. I figured you'd come here, Jamie said quietly. I stared ahead. Shouldn't you be with your family? I left, he said. I turned then, startled. What do you mean you left? I couldn't stay there. Not after everything. Not after that night. I looked away. He continued. Samantha's been calling me. So has your mom. I didn't answer. You shouldn't be here, I said. And yet here I am. His voice wasn't smug. It was tired, soft, like someone unraveling. Ryan, he whispered. We need to talk. About what? I asked, though I already knew. He leaned in, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. About what this is. I shook my head. It was a mistake. Don't do that. It was, I said, it was one night, one moment of weakness. You really believe that? I paused. I have to. Jamie exhaled slowly. Then I don't. He pulled something from his pocket and laid it on the bar. A photograph. I blinked. It was us. Years ago. A blurry shot from some family holiday. Me and Jamie laughing near the bonfire, holding marshmallows on sticks. Back then, I thought nothing of it. But now, I saw it differently. The way he was looking at me. The way I was leaning slightly toward him. The way our hands were almost touching. I've carried this for years, he said. I swallowed hard. Why? Because I knew, long before you ever did. I stared at the photo, then at him, and for 1 second, I wanted to forget everything. The ring on my finger, the vows I made, the woman who trusted me. I just wanted to let go, to fall, to stop pretending. But I didn't. I stood up instead. I can't do this. Jamie didn't move. I get it, he said quietly. I nodded, grabbed my coat, and left. That night, I finally went home. The lights were off. The house felt too quiet. I stepped inside like I was walking into a crime scene, afraid of what I might find. Samantha was sitting in the dark. She didn't speak, just looked at me. Her face was blank. Her eyes weren't. You lied, she said softly. My throat closed. What? I know, Ryan. I blinked. What do you know? I know you've been with someone else. I stared at her. No, Don't lie again, she snapped. Her voice cracked, but her eyes stayed sharp. I found your shirt on the guest bed. I smelled his cologne on it. My heart dropped. He was here, she said. Wasn't he? I said nothing. She laughed bitterly. My brother Ryan? Silence. Then, I'm sorry. 2 words. Useless ones. She stood up, slapped me across the face. Hard. I didn't stop her. Tears welled up in her eyes. Was it just sex? I shook my head. I don't know. She flinched. That answer hurt more than anything else I could have said. And then she walked out, grabbed her purse, closed the door behind her, and I stood in the middle of the living room, bleeding from inside. The next morning, she was gone. So was her ring. And just like that, everything I thought was solid in my life crumbled. But the worst part? Deep down, beneath the guilt and the shame and the devastation, a small, awful part of me felt relief. Because now the lie was over. Now I had to face the truth. And that truth had a name. Jamie. I didn't leave the house for 3 days. The silence was too loud. The space too clean. Samantha's absence filled every corner like a fog I couldn't clear. Her closet was half empty. The bathroom drawer, where she kept her makeup, had been wiped clean. And yet, her scent still lingered. Lavender and jasmine. It haunted me. I stood in the hallway outside our bedroom, holding my wedding ring in my palm like it was a blade. I couldn't bring myself to put it back on, and I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It sat there, cold, heavy, and completely meaningless now. The only reason I left the house was because my boss, Harold Timmons, finally called. He didn't sound angry, just curious. Everything okay, Ryan? You've missed 3 meetings. The board is asking questions. I'll be in tomorrow, I said. He paused. You sure? I forced a breath. Yeah, I need normal. But nothing felt normal anymore, especially not me. The office felt sterile. Bright white lights. Murmurs of keyboards. People in tailored suits pretending not to notice my return. Natalie, my assistant, approached me at my door. She was 26, sharp as hell, and one of the few people in the building I actually trusted. Morning, she said, handing me a folder. These need sign-off by noon. Also, your wife dropped off your gym bag on Monday. She didn't say anything. I nodded. Thanks, Nat. She hesitated, then asked gently, You okay? I looked up. Something in her eyes said she already knew I wasn't, but she wouldn't ask, and I wouldn't answer. I'm fine, I lied. She nodded once and walked off. I sat at my desk for 15 minutes, staring at a blank email draft. Then I opened a private tab, typed in his name, Jamie Wilder, age 31, born in Boston, undergraduate in visual media from NYU, currently freelancing as a videographer. No social media presence under his real name. Of course not. Jamie never liked being visible. He always said people could only break you if they knew where to aim. So he stayed quiet, clever, unreachable, except I knew him, really knew him, and that made all of this worse. I ended work early, told Natalie I had a headache. By 5:45 p.m., I was standing in front of Jamie's building. He lived in a brownstone walk-up near the East Side Galleries. His third-floor apartment had ivy curling up the side of the brick wall and a flickering porch light that buzzed like it needed changing. I hesitated, then buzzed 3B. No answer. I waited, then buzzed again. Finally, a voice came through the intercom. Haven't heard from you in 4 days, and you show up here like it's nothing? His tone wasn't angry, just sad, tired. Can I come up? I asked. Silence. Then a click. The door buzzed open. His place was dim, like always. Jamie hated harsh lights. He was sitting on the couch, barefoot, one knee pulled to his chest, a hoodie loose on his frame. His black hair was a little longer than last week. He hadn't shaved. He looked like someone who hadn't slept. I didn't blame him. Hey, I said. Hey, he replied, barely looking at me. I sat down in the armchair across from him. The space between us felt wider than the room. We didn't speak for a while, just existed. Finally, I broke the silence. She left me. I figured. She knew. Jamie nodded. I could tell from her voice when she called. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I don't know what to do. You don't have to do anything, Jamie said. You're free now. I laughed bitterly. It doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like I burned down a house I built for 7 years. He looked at me then. You built it with lies. That stung, because it was true. And the worst part? He wasn't being cruel. He was being honest. And it made me want to disappear. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I whispered. But you did. His voice cracked. And so did I. He stood up, walked to the window, looked out like the answers might be on the street. Do you think I wanted this? He asked quietly. To fall for my sister's husband? To spend years pretending every family dinner didn't kill me? I didn't respond, because what could I say? He turned around. For years, Ryan, I kept this inside. I watched you be happy with her. I told myself I was being stupid, that I'd get over it. His voice dropped to a whisper, but I never did. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since that night, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe. He wasn't just a mistake. He was a consequence of every choice I'd been too scared to make. I'm sorry, I said again. Jamie shook his head. I don't want apologies. Then what do you want? He looked at me, and this time his eyes didn't flinch. You. The word landed like a fire alarm. Loud, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. But I couldn't answer, because something inside me was still shaking. I can't just jump into something. I said carefully. I'm not asking you to, Jamie replied. Then what are you asking? I'm asking if you feel the same. I stood up, pacing now. Jamie, this is complicated. No, he cut in. It's not. It's actually really simple. Either you felt something or you didn't. I turned to him. I did. The words dropped like stones from my chest. I do. He stepped closer. So what now? I swallowed hard. I don't know. But we both knew that wasn't true. Because I was already here. I'd already chosen this. Now I had to decide if I was brave enough to stay. He reached for my hand, and I let him. His fingers were warm, steady, and mine stopped shaking. Just for a second. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, but because, for the first time in months, I felt like I was breathing for real. Jamie stayed quiet after we sat on the couch together, his hand still barely resting against mine. It wasn't romantic. Not exactly. It was something else, something closer to recognition. The kind that says, I see you now, and maybe I always did. He didn't try to kiss me, didn't lean in, didn't push. He just stayed. And that silence between us, it was the most honest thing we'd ever shared. Around midnight, Jamie stood. I'm going to make tea, he said. I followed him into the small kitchen, watching as he moved with casual familiarity. Barefoot, hoodie slipping off one shoulder, his hair messy and unstyled. There was something raw about him. Real. The opposite of everything my life had become. He set 2 mugs down and handed me one. Chamomile. Of course. Jamie believed in soft things, even when everything else felt sharp. I took a sip. I can't go back to her, I said, staring into steam. I know. She deserves better. She does. I looked up. So, do you? He blinked. What? You deserve more than this, I said. More than stolen moments. More than hiding. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, are you saying that because you mean it or because you feel guilty? I hesitated, and he saw it. Ryan, he whispered, you can't fix me if you're still broken. The words hit harder than they should have, because he was right. I left just before sunrise. We didn't say goodbye. He watched me walk down the steps, his figure silhouetted in the window. It felt like a movie ending, only I wasn't sure what genre. Romance? Tragedy? Maybe both. The next morning, I met Samantha at a quiet cafe near our old apartment. She'd sent the text the night before. Let's talk. I need to say things I didn't get to when I was screaming. I was already there when she walked in. She wore all black, minimal makeup, her expression unreadable. But her hands shook when she reached for a coffee. I didn't know whether to say hello or apologize again, so I did both. Hi, I'm sorry. She sat down, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and nodded once. You look like hell. Thanks. We both half smiled. Then she leaned forward. Was it always him? I stared at the table. No, not always. But for a while, yes. She swallowed. And you didn't tell me because I didn't know how. She stared at me for a long time. Then, I used to think the worst thing that could happen was losing you to another woman. Her voice cracked. I never thought I'd lose you to my brother. I flinched. I never wanted this to happen. I believe you. That surprised me. She continued, quieter now. You weren't cruel, just cowardly. That hurt more than anger ever could. Because it was true. I'd been a coward. In love. In truth. In everything. Samantha stirred her coffee. No sugar. No cream. Just black. She always liked bitter things. Do you love him? I opened my mouth, closed it, then opened again. I don't know if I understand what love is anymore. That's not a no. No, I said, it's not. We didn't cry. We didn't shout. We just sat in the wreckage of what used to be a life together. By the time we stood, she looked lighter, less angry. Don't call me for a while, she said. I won't. But if you're going to be with him. I waited. She met my eyes. Don't hide it. And then she left. And I stood there, feeling like I'd been set free and stabbed in the chest at the same time. A week passed. I didn't call Jamie. He didn't text me. But I thought about him constantly. At work. In traffic. Lying awake at 3 a.m. And every time I reached for my phone, I stopped because I still didn't know what I was reaching for. Closure? Or something terrifyingly permanent. Then came the call I wasn't expecting. It was from Lisa, Jamie, and Samantha's mother. She was always elegant, stern, the type of woman who wore pearls to brunch and ran charity boards with military precision. Ryan, she said flatly, we need to talk. I froze. Yes, ma'am. Tomorrow, noon, the house. She hung up. No questions. No warmth. Just a summons. And I knew this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be an interrogation. The next day, I drove out to the family estate, the place where Samantha and Jamie grew up. White columns, gated drive, a house that always looked like a magazine spread. But today it felt cold. Lisa answered the door herself, her expression unreadable. We walked into the study. She didn't offer tea, didn't ask how I was, just sat down across from me. "I won't pretend I understand what you've done," she began. I said nothing, but I care about both my children, and I want to be clear, I won't let this destroy them. I looked at her. "You think I want that?" "I think your actions say more than your intentions ever could." "Fair." She folded her hands. "Jamie is fragile. He won't admit it, but he is." I nodded. "He deserves someone who won't run when it gets hard." That hit deeper than I expected. "Do you love him?" she asked. I exhaled. "I don't know what to call it yet, but I know it's real." For a second, she looked like she might soften. Then she stood. "If you're going to be with him, then be with him." I stood, too. "No more lying. No more hiding." She added, "I understand." She opened the door. "Then leave. And don't come back until you're certain you're not going to break my son." I nodded once and walked out. But the moment I got into my car, I knew where I needed to go. I showed up at Jamie's apartment without warning. No call, no text. Just knocked on his door like I hadn't spent 7 nights in a row pretending I could forget the way his voice echoed in my memory. The door opened slower than usual. He looked different, less guarded, more tired, but his eyes, still sharp, still him. "Hey," I said. He didn't smile, just stepped aside to let me in. The same old record player was spinning in the corner. Soft jazz, the kind of sound that makes silence feel intentional. He sat down on the edge of the couch. I stayed standing. "I talked to your mom," I said. He nodded, unsurprised. "She called me right after. Said you came clean." "I did." Jamie leaned back against the couch cushions, arms crossed. "I didn't know you were capable of that." The words weren't cruel, but they cut, because I deserved them. "I'm sorry it took me this long," I said. He didn't respond, so I kept going. I told her I wasn't ready to call it love. Jamie flinched. "But I also told her it was real, that you're real, and that I'm not pretending anymore." This time he looked at me, slow, measured, tired. "What are you doing here, Ryan?" "I don't want to run from this anymore." "And what is this exactly?" I stepped closer. "You, me, the truth." His voice cracked. "It's not that easy." "No," I said, "but it's honest." We stared at each other for what felt like a century. Then, finally, he broke the silence. "You left me standing at the edge of something I didn't ask for, Ryan. I didn't ask to fall for you." "I know. I spent years watching you play the perfect husband, sitting across the table from you, smiling like I wasn't breaking." "I know. And when you finally kissed me, I hoped it meant something. But then you disappeared." I stepped closer. I was scared. He stood, face inches from mine now. "I still am, I admit it, but not of you." "Then what?" I swallowed. "Of being the man I've always hidden from." And with that, the room changed. The air got heavier. The music fuzzed into static in my ears. Jamie leaned forward, slowly, until his forehead touched mine. "No more lies," he whispered. "No more." He kissed me, soft this time. Not hungry, not rushed, just full of breath and fear and forgiveness. And I kissed him back, like it was the only thing keeping me alive. We didn't have sex that night. We didn't even undress. We lay on the couch, his head on my chest, his fingers tracing circles on my shirt like he was memorizing the feel of safety. "I don't know how to do this," I said into the quiet. "We'll learn," he murmured. "I've never been with a man." "I know. It scares me. It should." I looked down. "But not because it's wrong," he added quickly. "Because it's different, and different asks you to grow." He was right. I'd never had to grow in my marriage, just perform. But this required vulnerability, realness. It terrified me, and I wanted it anyway. The next morning, I woke to find him in the kitchen making pancakes, the way he used to when we were just brother-in-law and friend, back before anything had crossed the line. He didn't speak as I walked up behind him, just poured syrup onto 2 plates and handed one over. I looked at him. No makeup, no filter, no walls, just Jamie and me, and the truth that we couldn't undo. Work was strange after that. Natalie, my assistant, cornered me in the hallway. "You seem lighter." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that a good thing?" "Depends," she said. "You dating someone?" I blinked. "What makes you ask that?" "People don't get that kind of glow from sleep or vitamins, Ryan." I laughed awkwardly. She stepped closer. "I don't care who it is," she said. "But if they make you this bearable to work with, hold on to them." I smiled, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to hide. "Thanks, Nat." She winked. That weekend, I asked Jamie to meet me at Rose's Cafe, the place we used to go after family functions, back when this was all innocent. He showed up wearing a denim jacket, hair tied back, that familiar nervous half-smile on his lips. "You okay?" he asked as he slid into the booth. I nodded. "Better now." We ordered coffee, talk about safe things, films, clients, weather. Then I leaned forward. "I want to come out." He blinked. "What?" "I want to stop lying. To everyone. My friends. My job. The world." Jamie looked stunned. "Are you sure?" "No," I said, "but I'm tired of being ashamed of something that feels like the only real thing in my life." He stared at me like he didn't know whether to kiss me or cry. "I'm not asking you to be public," I added, "but I am telling you that I'm done being afraid." He reached for my hand under the table, and I didn't pull away, not even when the waiter came back, not even when 2 older women stared from the next booth, not even when I saw a coworker I vaguely recognized walk past the window, because I was done shrinking. I was done pretending. And if the world wanted to look, let them. I had finally chosen something honest, someone honest, and I wasn't going to hide from that anymore. The fallout started on a Thursday. It always starts on an ordinary day, doesn't it? Nothing dramatic. No thunderstorm. No ominous foreshadowing. Just a normal morning with slightly burnt toast, a stiff tie, and my phone buzzing 3 times before I'd even finished my coffee. 3 missed calls. All from Samantha. And a 4th came through while I was staring at the screen. I answered it. "Hello." "You need to get over here," she said. Her voice was sharp, controlled, but beneath it, rage. "Samantha, what's wrong?" She didn't answer the question. Instead, she said, "Don't bring him." The line went dead, and my stomach twisted like someone had shoved a fist straight through it. When I arrived at her apartment, she didn't even open the door fully, just yanked it back and walked straight into the living room. I followed her, cautiously. She stood in front of the fireplace, arms crossed. "You said you wouldn't hide anymore." I froze. "What?" She turned, holding up her phone. Instagram. A photo. Us. Me and Jamie. At Rose's Cafe. Our hands touching under the table. Not obvious to strangers. But to her, loud. Painful. I looked at her. Guilt clawed through my chest. "I didn't know someone took that." I said softly. "You didn't have to," she snapped. "Because you weren't hiding. Not from them." "Samantha, you humiliated me." "No," I said, stepping forward. "I never meant to do this to you." "Don't say that." Her eyes welled, but she didn't blink. "You chose him over me. And I could maybe accept that if you'd been honest from the start. But you lied. You pretended. You married me." I was lying to myself back then, too. That doesn't make it better. I didn't argue, because she was right. She wiped her eyes quickly, as if furious at herself for the weakness. Then she looked up again. "Do you love him?" I hesitated. Not out of doubt. Out of fear. "Yes." She nodded, slowly, once. "Then you better be sure. Because if you break his heart after breaking mine, there'll be nothing left of you." I left feeling like I'd stepped out of one life and into another. The first one was over. the marriage, the illusion, the man I'd been. Now, there was only this version of me. Raw, reckless, real. Jamie was sitting on my couch when I got back. He looked up from a book. "You saw her?" I nodded. "She knows," he said. "She saw the photo. And she's hurting. But she deserves to know the truth. All of it." He closed the book, and for the first time since all this started, he smiled. Not wide, not triumphant, but relieved. "You're really doing it," he said. I sat beside him. I already did. That weekend, I told my parents, and nothing prepared me for their reaction. My mom cried, not because I was gay, but because I'd suffered in silence for so long. She kept saying, "I wish you trusted me." I told her it wasn't about trust. It was about shame. She held my face and said, "Never carry shame that doesn't belong to you." I broke down, and so did she. My dad didn't say much, just listened, nodded, then poured me a drink and said, "Son, love is hard enough to find. Don't make it harder by running from it." I hadn't expected that. Not from a man who spent most of his life telling me how to be a man. But I think he finally saw me. Not the version they wanted. The real one. Of course, not everyone took it well. At work, a few clients dropped off quietly. My boss, Greg, called me into his office. He didn't mention the photos. Didn't say the word gay. But he did say this. "Some people are going to talk. Your job is to decide if you care." I said I didn't. He nodded, and we moved on. Just like that. Not perfect, but progress. Meanwhile, Jamie was still struggling with his own version of coming out. He'd always been open with friends. But now the stakes were higher. His sister knew. His mother knew. The city knew. And it was terrifying. He started getting DMs from strangers. Some were kind. Others were violent. It shook him. One night, I found him sitting on the balcony, hoodie over his head, fingers trembling as he held his phone. "They think I stole you," he whispered. "You didn't. They think I ruined a marriage. You didn't do that either." He looked at me with tired eyes. But I was part of it. I sat beside him, took the phone from his hands, and kissed his cheek. People are going to write their own versions of the story. Let them. He turned to me slowly. "And our version?" I smiled. "We're still writing it." A week later, we made it public, on our own terms. Jamie posted a photo, just the two of us at the park, laughing, natural, unposed. His caption was short, "No more hiding." The comments exploded. Love, hate, confusion, support, threats, questions. But none of it mattered anymore, because we were finally standing in the open, and we weren't alone. One night, we went back to Rose's Cafe. Same booth, same jazz, same old waitress who had known us before any of this began. She looked at us, took our order, then said, "You both look different." Jamie smiled. "Different how?" She looked between us and said, "Like you're finally breathing the same air." We didn't need to say out loud, but in that moment, we knew we'd walked through the fire, and somehow we were still here. I thought we were in the clear, that after the photo, the backlash, the tears, we'd hit the worst of it. But I was wrong, because what came next wasn't about the outside world. It was about inside, the cracks Jamie never let anyone see, and the ones I didn't know still existed in me. It started small. He stopped replying to texts right away. Took longer to answer calls. Said he was just tired when we hung out. And when I told him I loved him, he smiled, but didn't say it back. Not always. And then, one night, after dinner at my place, he stood by the door like he wanted to leave but wasn't sure how. I asked him what was wrong, and he just said, "Do you ever wish we could go back?" I blinked. Back where? Before. Before us. He shook his head. No, just before it was this. I stared at him, and something in me started to unravel. "You mean before we came out?" He hesitated, and that silence, it said more than words ever could. I stepped closer. "Jamie, talk to me." He didn't look up. I thought it would feel easier, he whispered. Being honest, being seen. But I've never felt more watched in my life. We sat on the couch. Quiet. Still, I thought this was what we wanted. I said, after a minute. He nodded. It is. It's just hard. I swallowed. I can handle hard, but I can't handle silence. He turned to me finally, eyes soft, full of something heavier than sadness. I'm scared, Ryan. I blinked. Of what? Of losing myself in this. You found yourself in this. No, he said. I found you. And that wrecked me, because I realized what he meant. Somewhere between the fight, the fallout, and the freedom, he'd forgotten how to just be Jamie. He started going on long walks alone, stopped coming over as much. Our texts became shorter. Our calls ended faster. And one night, when I told him I missed him, he replied, "Me too. I just need space right now." I didn't sleep that night. My chest ached in a way that felt stupid and dramatic, because I wasn't being ghosted by some Tinder match. I was losing the person I'd shattered my life to be with, and I didn't know how to fix it. 2 days later, he showed up at my apartment. No warning. Just walked in, hair messy from wind, jacket damp from the rain. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he should stay. "Did I mess this up?" he asked quietly. I stood up from the couch. "No," I said, "but you're drifting." "I know." "Why?" He bit his lip. "I don't know who I am anymore without the fight." I blinked. What fight? The hiding, the pretending, the struggle to be seen. It gave me purpose. And now that it's gone, he looked at me. I feel hollow. I walked to him. "Jamie, you're not just the product of pain. You're you." And I didn't fall in love with a victim. I fell in love with a man. He looked up, eyes glassy. "But what if I'm not enough outside the fight?" "You are," I whispered. "You always were." He leaned into me, and I held him, tight, real, and for a moment, the air around us stilled again. We took a step back from the spotlight after that. No more posts, no more cafe dates. We lived smaller, quieter, together, and strangely, that made us stronger. We built routines, walks after work, Netflix without the pressure to touch, conversations about everything, music, therapy, childhood wounds. We learned each other again, not just as rebels in love, but as men learning how to heal. One night, we sat on my balcony. A candle flickered on the table between us. He sipped red wine slowly and said, "I talked to your sister." I froze. "What?" She reached out. I sat up. "What did she say?" Jamie looked at me carefully. "She said she forgives you." My heart stopped. "She doesn't understand it," he continued. "But she said she's seen how much more alive you look now than you ever did with her." I didn't know what to say. "She told me, if I hurt you, she'll kill me." I laughed, tears in my eyes. That sounded like her. Jamie nodded, smiling. She said she was angry, but she realized some people are meant to be part of your origin story, not your forever. I looked at him, and suddenly I couldn't breathe because he felt like forever. That night, we made love again. Not like the first time, not out of desperation, but slowly, intentionally, with hands that knew exactly where to hold, and a kind of softness I didn't think I'd ever earn. Afterward, we lay there, legs tangled, his chest against my back, and he whispered, "I don't want to run anymore." I smiled. "Then stay." He didn't answer, but he didn't move either. And sometimes silence can be the loudest kind of yes. There's a moment when you think the worst is behind you, when the chaos settles, and peace finally feels possible. But peace, it turns out, is not always quiet. Sometimes it's just a calm before another storm. It was early fall. The air had turned crisp. Leaves were starting to blush with color, and Jamie had started spending more time at my place than his. We joked about getting a dog. We fought over takeout menus. We kissed in the kitchen, halfway through loading the dishwasher. It felt normal. Too normal, maybe, because in the back of my mind, I still expected something to snap. And it did. just not in the way I thought. It was a Tuesday when I got the message. A DM, anonymous account, no profile photo, just words. You think you're safe because she's quiet? You should ask Samantha what she's planning. I froze. The message wasn't aggressive, but it had weight. And it came at a time when I finally wasn't looking over my shoulder. So I sent a text. Me, did you tell anyone about the divorce details? Samantha, why? Me, I got a weird message. She didn't reply for 2 hours. And then finally, Samantha, I didn't, but someone else might have. Me, who? Samantha, my cousin, the one who works at the firm your dad's friends with. And that's when my stomach dropped, because this wasn't about social drama anymore. This was about my job, about my professional reputation, about everything I'd worked to rebuild. That night, I told Jamie. We were in bed, lights off, both of us barely dressed, curled under a single blanket. He turned toward me when I told him, "You think they're trying to use the divorce against you?" I think someone's trying to stir something up, maybe make it look like the relationship started before it ended. He sat up, but it didn't. I know that. You know that. But people don't care about timelines. They care about headlines. He was quiet. And then, "Do you want me to stay quiet?" I looked at him. "What?" "If it gets worse," he said. "If it starts affecting your job. Do you want to disappear for a while?" I almost laughed, but I didn't, because his eyes were serious. And it hurt like hell. "Jamie," I said, reaching for his hand, "you're not the problem. You're the reason I got out of the lie in the first place." "I know. I don't want to be the reason you fall, either." "You're not," I whispered. "You're the only reason I'm still standing." A few days passed. More DMs, most anonymous. One said, "Real men don't ruin their families." Another, "You should have kept your sickness a secret." And then another that chilled me. "There are consequences for embarrassing people like him." That last one, it had a screenshot attached. My dad, walking out his office, flanked by 2 men in suits. A blurry image, but recognizable, taken from across the street. Jamie looked at it and frowned. "Someone's watching," he said. "Yeah," I whispered. "But who?" It didn't take long to find out. My boss called me into his office on Friday. Greg, same gray suit, same impassive tone. He gestured for me to sit, then dropped a manila folder on his desk. "Photos," he said. "Emails. A few typed-up statements." I didn't open it, because I didn't need to. "I've been informed," he continued, "that your conduct, both during and after your marriage, may compromise certain client relationships." I exhaled slowly. "And you believe that?" He paused, then leaned forward. "I don't care who you date, but I care when private lives become company problems." My jaw tightened. "So what now?" "I'm not firing you," he said, "but I'm reassigning you. Reassigning to a smaller division, lower stakes, less visibility." I blinked. "You're demoting me. Temporarily." "No, you're punishing me for being honest." He didn't deny it, because he didn't have to. I walked out of that building without a plan. My phone buzzed twice in my pocket. I didn't check it, because I couldn't breathe. This was exactly what I'd feared. Not the hate, not the whispers, but the quiet ways people retaliate, the polite rejection, the smile while they push you aside. Jamie met me at my apartment. I didn't speak when he opened the door, just stood there. He saw the look on my face and pulled me in without a word. I broke the silence first. I got reassigned. He didn't ask why. Didn't ask what. He just said, "I'm sorry." And then, "Do you want to quit?" I shook my head. "No, I want to fight." He smiled, not because he was happy, but because he understood. The next week was war, not with fists, but with truth. Jamie and I made a decision to speak out, not to retaliate, but to reclaim our own narrative. We wrote a joint statement, posted it on our socials. Simple, calm, clear. We never asked for attention. We only want to stop lying. If being honest makes some people uncomfortable, That says more about them than it does about us. The response? Overwhelming. Thousands of messages. People who related. People who cried. People who said they felt seen for the first time in years. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt anchored. It didn't fix everything. I still had to prove myself again at work. Still had to navigate the tension with former clients. Still had to rebuild what had been slowly dismantled by bias. But I wasn't doing it alone. Jamie was there. Every day. Every setback. Every step forward. One night, we went out for drinks. A quiet rooftop bar. Dim lights. Cold breeze. We sat under string lights, sipping whiskey and watching the city blink. He turned to me and said, "I used to think being with you would be a risk." I looked at him, and now, he smiled. It still is, but now I know it's one worth taking. I leaned in, kissed him softly. I don't regret a single thing. He kissed me back, and whispered against my lips, "Neither do I." I thought the past had finally given up, that it had packed its bags and slipped out the back door while we weren't looking. But the thing about the past? It always finds a way to let itself back in, even when the lock's been changed, even when you swear you're ready. It started with a knock, not a text, not a DM, an actual knock on the door. Jamie and I were halfway through making dinner. Music playing, wine uncorked, something cheesy melting in the oven. When it happened, we both paused, looked at each other. No one was supposed to be visiting. I wiped my hands and opened the door. And there she was, Samantha, my ex-wife, standing on my front step, holding a small box. She looked different. Hair darker, eyes tired, but still her. Still the woman I once stood beside at an altar, trying to believe I could love her the way she deserved. I swallowed hard. "Hey, hey," she said back, voice thin. "Everything okay?" She looked down at the box in her hands. I didn't know where else to take this. Jamie stepped up behind me, just close enough to show he was there, but far enough to not make it a scene. Samantha noticed, and to her credit, she didn't flinch. "I'm not here to fight," she said quickly. "I'm not here for closure or revenge, or whatever the hell people do in the movies." I nodded. She handed me the box. "What is it?" "I found it when I moved out of the old place. Stuff from before. Letters. Some photos. One from our wedding, but also one I think you need to see." That caught my attention. I opened the box right there. Inside, among folded notes and ticket stubs, was a single Polaroid. Faded edges. Slightly curled. Taken years ago. Me, my father, and a man I hadn't seen since I was 15. Uncle Drew, my dad's childhood friend. The man who used to visit during holidays. The man I hadn't thought about in over a decade. Except now, something clicked, because Jamie looked over my shoulder at the photo, and his face went pale. "Is that?" he started. I stared, and then I realized. That man, Drew, he'd been at Jamie's church. Not once, not twice, but regularly. In the back row, whispering to the pastor after services. Jamie turned to me. "He's not your uncle, is he?" "No," I said slowly. "He's not related to me at all." Jamie's mouth opened like he was about to say something, but then closed again. I looked at Samantha. "Why did you bring this now?" "Because," she said carefully, "someone reached out to me a few days ago, asked about our divorce, about the real reason." My throat tightened. "Who?" "I don't know. It was from a private number. But then they sent this photo. Told me to think twice before supporting liars." Jamie looked at me. "You think it's him?" "I don't know," I said, "but I wouldn't be surprised." Samantha exhaled. I didn't say anything. I don't care about the gossip, but something about it felt bigger than spite. She looked between us. "You might want to find out who else is watching." After she left, Jamie and I sat in silence. The box on the table between us. The photo staring up like a ghost. I finally spoke. I remember him visiting. He always asked weird questions. About school. About my friends. Jamie was still staring. I saw him meet with the pastor. Last month. I thought it was random. It wasn't. No, he whispered. It wasn't. The next day, we did something I wasn't sure I'd ever do again. We went back to the church. Jamie's O1, the one where we first made eye contact across a pew, the one that tried to erase him. We sat in the back, didn't sing, didn't speak, just watched. And when the service ended, the pastor came down to greet people, including him. Drew, gray hair now, slight limp, but unmistakably the same man. He looked right at us, smiled, walked over slowly. Well, well, he said, didn't think I'd see you two again. Jamie stood up before I could. Cut the act. Why are you messaging my boyfriend's ex-wife? Drew's smile faltered. Excuse me? You sent her that photo. He didn't deny it. Instead, he turned to me. I knew your father before you were even born. He had big dreams for you. I narrowed my eyes. What does that have to do with anything? Drew's smile returned, but colder now. It's a shame. You threw it all away. My voice was sharp. No, I stopped pretending. He leaned in slightly. You think this ends here? You think the world's just going to clap for you? Jamie stepped forward. No, but we stopped being scared of cowards like you a long time ago. Drew straightened his jacket. Then you better be ready. Because I'm not the only one who thinks you made a mistake. And then he walked out, like a villain in a story that suddenly felt way too real. Jamie and I sat in the car for almost 20 minutes before starting it. Neither of us said a word. Because what do you say when the past starts clawing back at you? When people with smiling faces turn into puppeteers behind curtains? I looked over at him. He looked back. And in that silence, we knew we weren't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Back home, we went through the box again. Found more pictures. Some letters. But nothing as threatening as that photo. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That Drew wasn't working alone. That someone, maybe more than one, wanted to make us pay. Not just emotionally, but publicly, professionally, and maybe even legally. Later that night, Jamie reached for my hand. I'm not scared, he said quietly. I looked at him. You should be. He shook his head. I was scared for years. I don't have room for it anymore. I kissed his forehead. And for the first time since the doorbell rang, I believed we'd survive this. Together. But I also knew the war wasn't over. It had just changed uniforms. Jamie couldn't sleep that night. I could tell by the way his chest rose and fell just a little too fast. Even in the dark, the silence between us was no longer peaceful. It was loaded. And when I turned over to check on him, he was already looking at me, eyes wide open. I can't stop thinking about him, he whispered. Drew. He nodded. I thought church was the worst of it. The shame, the guilt. But now it feels like something else is coming. Bigger, meaner. I reached for his hand. It is... He didn't ask me to explain. Because deep down, we both knew we weren't just dealing with whispers anymore. We were dealing with people who smiled while they sharpened knives behind their backs. And Drew, he wasn't working alone. I could feel in my bones. The next day, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a year. Devin Reyes, a former colleague from a firm. He'd been one of the first to distance himself when my marriage ended. Not cruelly, just quietly, like most people do when they don't want to pick sides, but already have. His name lighting up my phone made my stomach turn. But I answered, Hey! He was out of breath. Noah, you need to see this. He sent a link before I could ask what he meant. I clicked it, and there it was. A blog. One of those gossip-adjacent sites that pretended to care about justice, but really just cared about clicks. Title in bold. Hidden relationships inside power firms. Are some execs crossing the line? Photos underneath. Me, Jamie, walking hand in hand outside a restaurant. Another photo, me at work. The caption read, An insider confirms questionable timelines between the senior analyst and his assistant-turned-boyfriend. Ethics breach or modern love. My jaw clenched. I kept scrolling. And there it was, Drew's name, listed as a source close to the family. It hit me like a punch. He wasn't just watching us. He was feeding stories. controlling the narrative, framing the entire relationship as if Jamie had only ever been my subordinate, which wasn't true, which was never true. But in media, truth is often irrelevant. Perception is the weapon, and ours was being twisted. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my hand, breathing through my teeth. Jamie walked out of the bathroom with a towel slung over his shoulder. He saw my face. What happened? I held up the phone. He read in silence, and then said, "So, with a headline now." "Yeah." And Drew's behind it. "Yeah." He sat next to me, dripping water onto the carpet. "I don't want to disappear again," he said. "I've done that before. I hid. I let other people define who I was." I looked at him, strong, determined, hurt, but still standing. "I don't want that for you either." "But I don't want this either," he said, pointing at the phone. "Being the scandal, being the lesson someone else learns from." "I know." I took his hand. "We fight it," I said. "Again, always." The following morning, I walked into the office like I was walking into court. Heads turned, voices lowered, and one assistant I barely knew whispered, "That's him." Like I was some kind of criminal. Like loving someone was now a chargeable offense. Greg, my boss, didn't wait long. He called me in by 10 a.m., shut the door, folded his arms. He didn't show me the article. Didn't need to. "I assume you've seen it." "Yes." He sighed. "I don't care who you love, Noah." I stared. "I need you to stop saying that." He blinked. "What?" "You and everyone else keep starting your sentences with, 'I don't care who you love,' right before you make it very clear that you do." He exhaled. "The problem isn't the relationship. It's the optics. Clients are nervous." "No," I said. "They're uncomfortable." Silence. I continued. "And discomfort is not the same thing as danger." He tapped the edge of his desk. "I'm not letting you go." "Good. But I am taking you off the Hanover deal." I blinked. "That's the biggest account of the year." "I know, but it's too hot right now." I stood. "Then I'll cool it down. You can't PR your way out of a scandal." I leaned forward. "It's not a scandal, Greg. It's a relationship. If you let people spin it into something else, then you're just as complicit as the ones feeding the fire." He didn't respond. So I walked out, head high, chest burning. By the time I got home, Jamie had already seen the latest wave of online attacks. His old church members were posting cryptic Facebook statuses. Someone had tagged a post with his dead name. Another had called us proof that modern society is spiraling. He met me at the door, didn't speak, just fell into my arms. I held him, and we stayed like that for what felt like an hour. Because sometimes the war outside pauses, just long enough for you to breathe, but never long enough to forget it's still coming. Later that week, we made a decision. If the world was going to watch, then we'd give them something worth watching. We did a video. Just us. No flashy edits. No scripts. Just truth. Raw. Honest. Real. Jamie spoke first. "I used to think I was broken," he said. "That I had to choose between faith and love. Between safety and honesty. But then I realized hiding isn't holy. And silence isn't survival." I took a breath and added, "This isn't about a scandal. It's about freedom. I spent years lying to protect people who never protected me back. I won't do that anymore. We won't." We posted it and logged off. No expectations. Just hope. It went viral. Hundreds of thousands of views in a week. Support poured in. From strangers. From old friends. Even from former clients who said, "If your firm lets you go, we'll hire you ourselves." And slowly, things shifted. A little brighter. A little braver. Even my father, distant, reserved, always hiding behind business suits and silence, sent me a text. Just 2 words. Proud. Finally. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't reply. Because some things take time to forgive. And some wounds don't close just because someone finally noticed they were bleeding. Jamie and I sat on the roof that night, blanket around our shoulders, watching the skyline flicker. He leaned into me. "Do you think it's over?" he asked. "No," I said softly. "I think the worst is done, but the hard parts are still ahead." He nodded and smiled, not because he was unafraid, but because he was ready anyway. And so was I. We had made it through the storm, but there was one more door left to open, one last truth, one final visit from someone I never expected to hear from again. The message came while Jamie was brushing his teeth. I was lying in bed, scrolling absently, trying to convince myself that the worst was behind us, until I saw the name. Dad. Not on my phone as Dad, but Richard Carter. Formal, distant, the way we left things. He hadn't texted in over a year. Not after the divorce. Not after the video. Not even after the gossip blogs. But now, suddenly he had something to say. Need to talk. It's urgent. Just that. No greeting. No warmth. Just business as usual. Jamie walked out of the bathroom. Towel over his shoulder, water still dripping from his curls. He saw my face before I said anything. "What happened?" I handed him the phone. He stared. "Are you going to respond?" I didn't know. I wanted to. Some part of me still stupidly craved his approval. But I also remembered how many times I sat across from him at dinner tables, trying to make conversation while he checked emails. How many times I tried to talk about school, about what I felt, about who I was becoming, and how often he just nodded without hearing a word. Still, I texted back, "What's this about?" The dots appeared immediately. "I'm in the city. I need to see you. Alone." Jamie arched an eyebrow. "Alone." I nodded. He's never been good with "we." Jamie touched my arm. "You don't have to go." But I did, because no matter how much time passes, there are some doors you still have to walk through, even if only to prove to yourself that you can. The cafe was quiet, neutral, public enough to be safe, private enough to feel risky. I spotted him at a table near the back. Same tailored blazer, same silver watch, same unreadable expression. He stood when I approached, didn't smile, didn't hug, just nodded once. I sat down. We stared at each other for a beat too long. And then he slid a file across the table. A literal file. Paper. Stapled. Branded with a logo I hadn't seen in years. Brightmore Investments. His old firm. "What's this?" I asked. He leaned forward. "Evidence." My mouth went dry. "Of?" He tapped the cover. Drew's involvement. He wasn't just feeding blogs. He was using insider info. Misreporting numbers. We traced some of the anonymous leaks back to one of his old shell companies. I blinked. "Why are you showing me this?" He exhaled. "Because I didn't believe you at first. I thought you were being dramatic, emotional. Then that video you posted went viral. And suddenly, my board started asking questions I didn't have answers for." "So now you care?" "No," he said. "Now I understand." There's a long pause. He looked at me for the first time like he saw me. Not the son he sculpted in his head, but the man sitting in front of him. Flawed. Free. Whole. He continued, voice lower now. "I spent years building a life that looked good on paper. I forgot to ask if it felt good in real life." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I didn't want to disappoint you." "You didn't. You acted like I did." He closed his eyes for a moment. "You reminded me of everything I didn't have the courage to be." That landed heavier than I expected. I leaned back. "Why now?" He looked at me straight. "Because it's never too late to start fixing what you broke." I didn't know how to respond. And maybe that was okay. Because sometimes healing doesn't need a speech. Sometimes it starts with silence. Shared. Understood. Hard-earned. Back home, Jamie was waiting on the couch. He stood the second I walked in. Well, I held up the file. He gave me proof. About Drew. And maybe something more. Jamie walked over slowly. "Like what?" I looked at him. Tired. Brave. Still here. A crack in the armor. A moment of truth. He smiled faintly. "Does it change anything?" "Maybe not for him," I said. "But for me? Yeah, it does." The next few days moved fast. I took the file to legal. Drew was suspended from every advisory board he sat on. The firm he once tried to sabotage publicly denounced him. The blog stopped writing. Some even issued quiet retractions. But the damage was already done. Not to us, to the people who thought we'd break. And when I walked into the office Monday morning, Greg stopped me by the elevator. He handed me a folder. "Hanover deal's back on your desk," he said, trying not to sound like an apology. I took it without a word, because I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to exist. Fully, openly. Finally, Jamie started painting again. Something abstract, moody, with deep reds and smudge blacks. When I asked what it was, he said, "Everything we survived." And I understood, because survival is messy, but it's beautiful, too, in the way it marks you, shapes you, sets you free. A week later, I got a call from Samantha. This time, she was laughing. "I just got invited to speak at a women's empowerment panel," she said. "And guess what topic they gave me?" I grinned. "What?" "Resilience after heartbreak." I laughed too. "You'll kill it." "I already did," she said. "Turns out, not all exes are mistakes. Some just teach you what real love should feel like." "Thanks," I said quietly, "for not becoming my enemy." She paused. "You were never the villain in my story, Noah. Just the truth I didn't want to hear." Jamie and I stood on the balcony that night. City lights below us. Wind brushing our faces. He turned to me. "So what happens now?" I looked at him. Soft smile. Gentle eyes. "Now we stop surviving." He raised a brow. And start living." It started with silence. Not the kind that follows a fight, but the kind that comes after healing. The kind that wraps around you when everything chaotic finally slows. The kind you feel in your chest when you wake up next to someone and realize you're not bracing for impact anymore. You're safe. You're seen. You're home. Jamie was curled beside me, half asleep, hair a mess, his breath warming the space between us. I traced a lazy finger down his forearm, not to wake him, just to remember this. Him. Us. After everything. Because a few months ago, none of this seemed possible. We were secrets, fears, what-ifs. Now we were Sunday mornings and shared toothbrushes and playlists in the kitchen. We were coffee before meetings and forehead kisses before bed. We were boring in the most beautiful way. But life never stops changing. And the next one came with an email. Subject line, "Speaking invitation, TDX Brooklyn." I clicked it. They wanted me to tell our story. Not as a scandal, not as clickbait, but as a story. One about truth and identity and how love sometimes sneaks into the wreckage. I read the email twice, then read it again, because somehow what started as a mistake was now something worth putting on a stage. Jamie insisted on helping me prep. He paced around our apartment, throwing outlines. What if you started with the day you woke up thinking it was your wife? I smirked. "You really want me to say that on stage?" He grinned. "That's the hook." I laughed, shaking my head. "I think I'll go with something softer." He walked up, kissed me on the cheek. "Soft is good. But don't be afraid to bleed a little, too." And that's when I realized I wasn't. Not anymore. The day of the talk, I wore all black. Not for drama. For clarity. To let my words carry color instead. I stood behind the curtain, palms sweating, eyes fixed on the glowing red, and in the center of the stage, a woman with a headset whispered, "You're up in 30. My heart raced. But when I looked toward the front row and saw Jamie sitting there, hands clasped in his lap, gaze locked on mine, everything settled. He gave me a small nod. I took a breath and walked out. I started slow. My name is Noah Carter. And a year ago, I woke up thinking it was my wife lying beside me. Pause, and froze when I saw who it really was. Laughter, uneasy, curious, exactly what I needed. I'm not here to tell you I was lost and now I'm found, or that everything makes sense, or that love is easy, because it's not, especially not when the world tells you who you're allowed to be and who you're not. I kept going. I told him about the marriage, the shame, the friendship that turned into something else, the kiss that broke the silence, the backlash, the firestorm, the freedom that followed, and the quiet kind of joy that grew from the ashes. When I finished, there was a long pause, then applause, louder than I expected. Jamie stood first. Then the rest followed. But all I saw was him. All I heard was him. Because applause fades. But love, real love, that echoes. After the talk, people came up to me. A woman in her 60s with tears in her eyes. My son came out last year. I didn't know how to support him until today. A teenage boy with a rainbow bracelet. You made me feel like I'm not wrong. A middle-aged man in a suit, voice barely a whisper. My assistant we've been sneaking around for 2 years. I think I finally had the courage to stop hiding. I didn't have the answers, but I gave them honesty. And somehow that was enough. When we got home, Jamie was quiet. Not heavy, just reflective. He stood by the window, looking out. I wrapped my arms around him from behind. "You okay?" He nodded, then turned. I used to pray that God would take this part of me away. I didn't speak. He wasn't done. But now I wonder if maybe this is the part that saved me. I brushed my hand down his cheek. "It's definitely the part that brought you to me." He smiled, eyes glassy. "I used to think loving you was the biggest risk of my life. And now I think it's the safest thing I've ever done." That night, we didn't talk much. Just curled into each other like roots growing deeper into the same soil, letting the quiet speak for us, letting the ache ease into peace. Because we didn't need words anymore, just time and trust and the sacred space we built between us. 6 months later, we moved out of the apartment, bought a place upstate, quiet town, 2 bedrooms, even though we only use 1. Lots of windows, lots of light. We planted a garden, got a dog, rescued Shy, just like us once. We named her Clementine. I started working remotely. Jamie started painting full-time. And life, it wasn't perfect, but it was ours, completely. Finally, every now and then, people still recognize me. Ask if I'm that guy from the TED Talk. I smile. Tell them, yeah, that was me. But inside, I'm thinking, that isn't who I am anymore. Because a version of me that woke up confused, that kissed a man in the shadows, that broke apart to find the truth, that man led me here. But this man knows who he is, knows who he loves, knows that the story doesn't end when the noise fades. It begins when you finally get quiet enough to listen to your own voice and follow it all the way home.